This is my audience. My name is Mia, and this is my informative speech on what applied behavior analysis is. Do you know somebody with autism? Chances are you do, whether that be a family member, someone you went to school with, or just somebody you've met one time. The rate of autism is the highest it has ever been. The CDC states that 1 in 54 children are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I'm a behavior technician, so I have the privilege of getting to work one-on-one with children on the spectrum. We use a process called Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA for short. ABA is a type of therapy that focuses on improving specific behaviors such as social skills, communication, reading, and academics, as well as adaptive learning skills such as fine motor dexterity, hygiene, grooming, domestic capabilities, punctuality, and job competence. There are hundreds of terms in ABA, but I'll just be going over a few of the main ones, such as positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative punishment, extinction and extinction burst, chaining, shaping, functions of behavior, and ABC data. What is applied behavior analysis? Applied behavior analysis is a type of therapy that focuses on improving specific behaviors such as social skills, communication, reading, and academics, as well as adaptive learning skills such as fine motor dexterity, hygiene, grooming, domestic capabilities, punctuality, and job competence. Positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is the addition of reward following a desired behavior with the purpose of increasing the likelihood the behavior will occur again. So this technically is giving somebody, an example that this would be is giving a child a piece of candy after they put their toys away because you're adding a stimulus, a reinforcer. Negative reinforcement is a response or behavior is strengthened by stopping, removing, or avoiding a negative outcome. So an example of this would be a child is eating food so he can get rid of the hunger pains. So the reinforcer is the food to get rid of the hunger pains. Reinforcement isn't the only positive and negative concept we use. We also use punishment. Positive punishment is presenting an aversive consequence after an undesired behavior is exhibited, making the behavior less likely to happen in the future. Negative punishment is a certain reinforcing stimulus is removed after a particular undesired behavior is exhibited, resulting in the behavior happening less often in the future. So an example of positive punishment would be a child touches a hot stove and feels pain. That's the punishment because he's feeling pain, which is the punishment, and that's what's being added, is the child touching it. An example of the negative punishment would be a child fights with their sibling and gets a toy taken away because you're taking something away. And my source for both these two slides were from the Association for Behavior Analysis International, or ABAI. This is a thing that's really helped me learn the differences between positive and negative punishment and reinforcement. So on the left we have stimuli added and stimuli removed. On top, we have behavior increases, behavior decreases. So for positive reinforcement, you're adding stimuli, but the behavior increases. So this is when you want a good behavior to happen, such as a child putting their toys away and they're getting that candy. Over here, the behavior decreases, positive punishment, you're adding stimuli. So when the child touches that hot stove, the behavior is going to decrease because they're going to be less likely to touch that hot stove again. Down here we have negative reinforcement. You're removing something, but you want that behavior to increase. So like our example from earlier, the child is eating food to get rid of the hunger. So the hunger is being removed, but the behavior of the kid realizing that they need to eat food is increasing. And over in this corner we have negative punishment. So that is when stimuli is removed and behavior decreases. So that one would be when a child fights with their sibling and gets their toy taken away. The behavior is going to be less likely to occur because they got that reinforcer taken away. Our next slide is extinction and extinction burst. Extinction is when reinforcement that is provided for problem behavior is discontinued in order to decrease or eliminate occurrences of these types of negative or problem behaviors. An extinction burst is when there is an increase in the negative behavior shortly after extinction procedures are implemented. So an example of extinction is a child keeps pestering and pestering for candy and is whining and crying, and instead of giving him that attention, you just ignore him. An extinction burst would be, in that same example, the child will cry and cry, but then the burst will be they throw a bigger tantrum or they cry even more. But following shortly after that extinction burst is the child will completely oblige and stop pestering you for the candy. And I got this source from the Special Learning Incorporation. Next we have chaining. Chaining is an instructional strategy based on task analysis whereby the sub-behaviors are recognized as requirements for task mastery. So an example of this would be a step-by-step detailed task analysis of microwaving food. So the example we have on here is teaching a kid to crack open an egg, which a lot of people think is just one step, cracking open an egg. But for chaining, it has to be extremely detailed and look at every single step. So crack the egg on the bowl, pull the shell apart, put egg into bowl, egg is cracked. So what most people would think is one step just became 4 steps. And so when teaching a child with autism chaining, you want, after every single step is mastered, you reinforce them. So cracking the egg, then they get reinforced. They have to master that before moving on to the next step. Similar to chaining, we have our next term, which is shaping. Shaping is a gradual behavior modification technique in which successive approximations to the desired behavior is rewarded. An example of this, a very popular example, is when B.F. Skinner discovered that in order to train a rat to push a lever, any movement in the direction of the lever had to be rewarded until finally the rat was trained to push a lever. So this is for anybody, not just children with autism. When you're teaching, like for example, when riding a bike, you want to teach a kid step by step and reward them every time, even if they don't make it the full way and they fall. When they get on the bike, you have to reward them and praise them because that's one step. And when they learn how to pedal, you reward them all the way until they get to that last and final step. And this source was from psychology.jrank.org. All of the previous terms and concepts have been things that the therapist uses to help the child, but this next concept is the reason that these children have these behaviors, which is the 4 functions of behavior. They are sensory, escape, attention, and tangibles. So sensory would be something that you can, something that the child needs to do. So an example would be twirling your hair when sitting for a long period of time, because that feels good to them and it's a sensory thing, or like sucking your thumb when you're trying to go to sleep. Escape would be when you tell a child to wash their hands and they run out of the room. They're trying to escape whatever that situation is. Attention would be, an example of attention would be a child's mom is focusing on another sibling, so that child screams so that the mom will give them attention. And the last function of behavior is tangible. And an example of tangible would be a child wants a car that their sibling has, so that they go up to them and push them so that they can have access to that car. Now we are approaching the last concept of ABA. ABC data, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The antecedent is the thing or event that occurs immediately before a problem behavior. Next is the behavior, which, as we discussed before, could be positive or negative. And then we have the consequence. This is the event that immediately follows a response. So this example that we have right here, the antecedent is a camp counselor is lecturing a class on being kind to each other. Children are sitting at their desks. The behavior is Todd begins to rock in his chair, shake his legs, and pick at his fingernails, which, as we learned in the previous slide, would be a sensory behavior because he's rocking and he's shaking his legs. And then the consequence of that would be the camp counselor ignored Todd's behavior and continued with the lesson. Todd's behaviors increased, which, as we learned in a few slides before, would be extinction. So the consequence for Todd shaking his legs and picking at his fingernails is extinction. And the reason his behaviors increased is because of the extinction burst. In conclusion, applied behavior analysis is very effective on helping people with autism get the skills they need to better function in society. Positive-negative reinforcement, positive-negative punishment, extinction and extinction burst, chaining, shaping, functions of behavior, and ABC data are all of the main things you will need to know on how to become a successful behavior technician or behavior analyst. I'll never forget the first time I saw one of my clients go from not knowing how to do a skill to being able to master it. Working with children with autism may not be for everyone, but for me, it is my dream job. Thank you.